Our gospel reading this morning comes to us from Matthew's Gospel, the 22nd chapter. Listen now for the word of the Lord. When the Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together. And one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. "Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest?" He said to them, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." Now, while the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them this question: "What do you think of the Messiah? Whose son is he?" They said to him, "The son of David." He said to them, "How is it then that David, by the Spirit, calls him Lord, saying, 'The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put your enemies under your feet'? If David thus calls him Lord, how can he be his son?" No one was able to give him an answer, nor from that day did anyone dare to ask him any more questions. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God indeed. The progressive rock band Rush in 1978 came out with a song called "Circumstances," in which they quoted the 19th century French scholar Jean-Baptiste Alphonse Karr, who said, "The more that things change, the more they stay the same." Now, I won't even try to say it in French, but Geddy Lee from Rush sings it in French, so if you check out the song, you'll hear it. And I've been thinking about our stewardship series this week. Our stewardship series for the month is the story of the church. And this week I've been thinking about our series. And it reminded me of that quote, that the more that things change, the more they stay the same. And for our story of the church series, we've watched some videos, we've constructed a timeline of the church, and so many of you participated in making it, and there's still an opportunity to attach more Post-its and check out what's on the board in the narthex there. It's wonderful. And I was looking at the board this week, and I was thinking about how some things have stayed the same, and some things have changed, right? I mean, the things that have stayed the same are the goodness of God. Throughout these 125 years of this church's history, the goodness of God. The importance of friendships, right? I mean, the exact friends that we have here may change. People come and go. People are born into our fellowship. People join the church triumphant. People move away. People move here. But the value of friendships stays the same. The importance and the history of great pastoral and lay leadership here. The leadership that has led this congregation through generations. The importance of our music ministries and how they help us worship God. And I know our anthem, wasn't that beautiful today? And the gifted people that we have here today, the gifted people that we've had leading us in worship throughout many generations together. You know, sometimes the names change, but what's important to us and the gifts that we have, they remain with us. And so the more that things change, the more things stay the same. 25 years ago, when we had our centennial celebration, we designed a seal. It's on our history book, and you've probably seen it from time to time. And on the seal, there's a picture of a tree, and you can see the roots of the tree, and you can see the branches of the tree and the leaves reaching out to the sun, and it says, "Rooted in the past, reaching to the future." That's on our centennial seal. That's in our centennial benediction, which we'll sing later on in the service. And I don't know, but I think in some ways that might also be a slogan for the Reformation, rooted in the past, reaching to the future. This is Reformation Sunday. I don't know if you were aware of that, but on Tuesday, actually, it'll be the 500th anniversary since Martin Luther posted his 95 Theses on Facebook. Oh no, it wasn't Facebook, was it? We didn't actually have Facebook 500 years ago. For some of us, that might be a surprise, but it's true. He posted them on the door of the church, right? And that helped start a movement. That, along with technological advances like the printing press, and suddenly knowledge and education was available not just for the wealthy and privileged. And the world changed radically, dramatically. 500 years ago, there was a rapid change in the world, unlike has been seen since until maybe these days. And so that era, which many historians call the modern era, it championed logic and reason. The idea that we could sort of systematically begin to understand and know everything, and that there were universal truths that we could find and discover and apply, and that the institutions have great authority and leaders are to be followed and respected, and the world and people viewed a lot of the things in the world as like a machine, right? That we could leverage and use towards the betterment of society, and there was great hope and enthusiasm. And now we have well entered a new era in history that a lot of folks call postmodernism, the era that follows that modern era, in which there's a lot of cynicism. With globalization, there's a lot of multiple viewpoints on how the world works and what truth is, and truth becomes more relative, right? We've seen that. Truth is relative and so dependent upon our perspectives in society and in the world today. The tyranny and totalitarianism of various governments throughout the 1900s, very much so, has questioned, has caused people to question authority and institution, and the world is changing just so rapidly. We no longer see things as a machine, but more organic, and things that are in so many ways beyond human control. Now, I'm very much simplifying all of this, okay? Very, very much simplifying it. But if we went through massive change 500 years ago during the Reformation, and as we entered this modern era, we are going through probably an equally rapid change around us today. Thomas Friedman wrote a recent book called Thank You for Being Late. And in the book, he talks about the rapid technological changes around us. He says if you took Intel's first generation microchip from 1971, the 4004, it was called, and then compare it to the latest chip Intel has on the market today, the 6th generation Intel Core processor, you will see that Intel's latest chip offers 3,500 times more performance, is 90,000 times more energy efficient, and is about 60,000 times lower in cost than its first predecessor. Okay? Now he says, what would happen had a 1971 Volkswagen Beetle improved at the same rate? Now listen to this. Listen to these numbers. Today, the Beetle would be able to go about 300,000 miles per hour. Not sure if we're ready for that. It would get 2 million miles per gallon of gas. I'm ready for that. And it would cost 4 cents. That may be my favorite part. You could, roughly speaking, he says, drive a car your whole life on 1 tank of gasoline. Think about that. That's the amount of rapid change we've seen in our technology. This is major change. And it's major change in the ways that we relate to one another. I mean, we know this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But you may or may not know that it's actually changing the physiology of our brains. This technology, the way that we relate, the way that we access information is totally different, and it's having an effect on us physically. I mean, if the printing press could change the world the way it did, how will this change history forever? And what does it mean to the church? Where's our place in all of this? Well, in some ways, I think we're going through a new Reformation. Again, with the changes in the world that we see around us, some of them we cheer for, some of them might scare us greatly. But with these changes, the church is called to continue being the church, and yet maybe continue in new ways. The more that things change, the more things stay the same. And some things will stay the same. I mean, we as Presbyterians, we follow a Reformed theology. We believe in that Reformed theology, and we tend to see things from that perspective. And some things, some aspects of our being Reformed Christians will not change, should not change. The importance of Scripture as the divine revelation of God, that we're saved by grace through Jesus Christ, that we don't earn salvation, right? That will stay the same. And always should stay the same. As will our importance, the importance of our theological tradition. But some aspects of that tradition may evolve. You know, I mentioned one of those markers of the modern era was the idea that we could systematize, that we could have grand theories that would encompass everything, and that we could slowly learn our way towards full knowledge and universal truth. John Calvin and Karl Barth were somewhat products of that way of thinking. They both wrote extensive systematic theologies. Calvin's Institutes was in 4 books. Barth's Church Dogmatics was in 12. And these theologies are wonderful, and they're beautiful, and they're informative, instructive. And we must hold on to them, always. I love Calvin and Barth, and I love our theological heritage. But as we see in our Gospel of Matthew today, Jesus so often wants to stymie our attempts to systematize and universalize and know everything because, well, we can't know everything. And in so many ways, our wanting to know everything is an attempt to control. Look at the Pharisees and the Sadducees, how they tried to control Jesus with their knowledge, with their understanding of the law, with their questions that they would constantly try to trick and trap him. I mean, this is what, the 3rd, 4th straight week we've seen them try to trap Jesus. Are they going to give up soon? Actually, they do. It says at the end of this passage in Matthew's gospel today, they do give up. Why? Because Jesus finally asks them a question, and they can't even come close to figuring out how to answer it. There are times when our human answers, they just fall short. I mean, in faith, we know that the Spirit intercedes when we pray with sighs too deep for words, right? I mean, that's straight out of the Word. Because, why? Because our words just won't say it. I went straight from seminary where I learned, I didn't learn, but I'd always had a great love of theology, and I learned an even deeper love of theology in seminary. And then I went off and became a hospital chaplain for a year, and I learned that as much as theology informs who we are and what we do, systematic theology was not what people wanted when they were in a hospital bed. Kind of fell flat. And it was common years ago in that modern era that we talked about, not that long ago, just a few short decades ago even, that it was not uncommon to argue people into faith. You could argue about religion and win the argument and maybe kind of win somebody over. That's so less common these days because there's so many viewpoints about God. And on top of that, people are stressed and they are worried and they are addicted to things that don't fulfill them. They're overstimulated. They're overly aware of their flaws that society and the world keep pointing out to them. And what they really want to know is God there? Does God care? And can God help me? And as Calvin and Barth would be the first ones to point out, the answer is emphatically and always yes, yes, and yes. And you know, the more that things change, the more they stay the same. Other Reformed traditions we will cling to, always, are the fact that as Presbyterians and as Reformed Christians, we believe in the priesthood of all believers. Each and every one of us here is a minister of the Lord. We go with a call placed upon us to serve. We believe in shared leadership. We believe in representative government, right? That's who and what we are as a denomination, as Christians, but recognizing how rapidly the world is changing around us and how we are all so pressed for time, for energy, for the resources of our lives. Recognizing that people have so many other choices today, not only in things to do on a Sunday morning or the rest of the week, but just choices in what church they might attend. I mean, you hear terms like church shopping, right? Where we get this consumer mindset that church is a place to go and get our sort of our feel good on so that we can then go and live out our life. The pressures of the world around us, I think, often make us forget that Christianity isn't something that we place on others as surrogate Christians for us at large, right? It's something that we bear and carry ourselves. And I love Dr. William Quick's commentary in your bulletins on Moses and Deuteronomy. I mean, I just, when I read that, I was kind of blown away because he talks about how Moses is on top of the mountain and he's not going to go into the promised land. And he talks about how we so often look at legends of the faith as people, well, Moses had a call. He had a powerful call, right? And then Dr. Quick reminds us that we all have a call. It's not just Moses. Moses doesn't get to go into the promised land, but all of the Hebrews, they are called by name to cross the Jordan into the Holy Land, to settle it. And the pressures of the world around us, and with the way the world is so rapidly changing, I think we often forget that call is something that we all have. We're all called to serve and to give, and to teach, and to share. And that's something this church does so well. I mean, that's one thing that we've celebrated week after week during this sermon series, The Story of the Church. We have celebrated how this church has such a wonderful history of generosity and with time and energy and all of our resources to support what is going on in the church. And part of that, is today is that we're finding that at the same time there's so much competing for our time and our energy and our focus these days that maybe wasn't there a generation or two ago. At the same time that's happening, we're also finding that churches today are tending to either grow or decline. There are very few churches, it seems like, if you look at statistics, that are staying the same. And so what do we do with that is recognize that in some ways we all have choices to make, whether we're going to continue to serve and support the church and to live out our call in our daily life, or whether we want to approach church as a place to go and get our feel good, as we're so often tempted to do, and then go and live out our life the rest of the week. There's so much, I think, to be excited about what's happening in this place. And we sent out a letter a month ago just saying that, how grateful we are for the ways that you have supported the ministries here, and look at the difference that is making. And I just want to challenge and encourage you to continue doing that and to pray about ways that you can share more of your time, more of your energy, more of your resources to continue supporting what we know God is doing in this place. Friends, this is how it has always been in the church. In God's church, it's built and sustained and led by the good resources that God gives all the people and that the people share together. And the more that things change, the more they stay the same. Friends, I don't know if what I'm saying today is any surprise to any of us, really. I mean, we see the way the world is changing around us. Maybe you are familiar with those terms I described. Maybe you know them better than I do. Maybe you're not familiar with those terms, but you see it happening. You see what's going on. You see how we're pressed. The church is pressed in so many ways. Not this church, the church universal. And I just want to say this, that to assure you that the church is and ever will be the place of the revelation of God's love in Jesus Christ. The church will always be the place where we know the love of Christ and what that means to us and to the world. It may have to adapt, it will have to adapt to the way the world is changing around us, and to learning to share that love and support people and answer those questions that people are asking today about whether God's really there or cares or not. But its purpose in the broader sense remains the same. The church was given the charge years ago to go into the world and make disciples, to love one another, to be salt and light, to serve one another, to share the good news. The world is changing, but the mission of the church does not. And by now, maybe you can say it with me. But the more that things change, the more things stay the same. Amen.